The things you think you need often clutter the life that you want to have. You don't actually need those things. You think you need them, but the life that you want is on the other side of all of the burdens that you're holding on to, right? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, TK Coleman.
Let's make it a beautiful day.
Alabama's here.
Hi, everybody.
We've got the rest of our team in the studio as well. And later in this episode, we're going to be joined by my best friend, Ryan Nicodemus. Yes, he'll be joining us for the lightning round. We're also going to talk about his travails, his obstacles, and all of the problems of moving back to Montana. He's got some woes for you. We'll share those with you after the lightning round. But coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're joined by minimalist traveler and author Light Watkins. Together, we'll talk to a caller about minimizing distractions and expectations while traveling. We've also got another caller who has a question about the difficulties of traveling with kids. Then we've got our lightning round segment, a live stream question about worry for you, and a listener tip. You can check out the full 2-hour Maximal edition of episode 406, where we answer 5 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free because sing along at home, y'all. Advertisements suck. Let's start with our callers. If you have a question or a comment for our show, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice recording to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Perry.
Hi, my name is Perry from Massachusetts. It seems to me that part of the goal of traveling lightly is to interact with the place and the people in an authentic and unencumbered way. One thing that can prevent that is the assumptions, prejudices, and expectations we carry with us to these new places. How can we minimize those distractions in order to connect more deeply? Thanks so much.
Joining us in the studio right now is Light Watkins. He's the author of this new book. It's called Travel Light, Spiritual Minimalism to Live a More Fulfilled Life. I'll hold it up if you're watching the video version. Ladies and gentlemen, Light Watkins.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Honored.
Oh, well, so I'm fascinated by this book. I want to talk about exactly what you pack and what you do. But as we unpack this first question here, we got a bunch of questions about travel for you. Mm-hmm. I've identified that clutter is really anything that distracts us from living fully. And it seems to me that your way of living out of a backpack, essentially, with about 30 things in that backpack, as you talk about in the book, is one way to eliminate a lot of these distractions and, as Perry says, expectations of travel. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I started living lightly in 2018, and that was an extension of, I credit my meditation practice and my gratitude practice and basically all the inner work that I've been doing and teaching and advocating for almost 20 years. And I think what Perry's referring to is a level of presence. And that's ultimately what we're all striving for, which you don't want to wait until you start traveling to be present, right? You want to start to be present in your kitchen. You want to be present while you're doing your dishes. You want to be present while you're having conversations with your family members, while you're showing up at work. And so the question is, how do I become more present in my everyday life? And that at some point requires some sort of internal reflection. And I would say the quickest way to presence is really just being grateful, just stopping, taking a few breaths, thinking about a few things you can be grateful for in that moment. Little things, like the fact that I can walk up a flight of stairs. So a lot of times, I've lived in situations where the elevator wasn't working and I had to take 3 flights of stairs. And you can, of course, huff and puff and feel upset about that. Or you can think to yourself, wow, I'm able to walk up these stairs. There are people in the world who would give anything to be able to walk up these 3 flights of stairs, and I'm able to do it strongly. I have no pains in my joints, etc. So I try to go there as much as possible and try to make it habitual. So it's not this whole thing. I'm not stopping, people from living their life. It's just something that I do for myself. And I found that the desirable side effect of that approach is that you just feel more present wherever you are.
You reminded me of a story that Sam Harris told on this podcast. And he talked about how something traumatic could happen. You can get into a horrible accident right now, and imagine the amount of money, time, resources, whatever you would pay just to get back to wherever you are right now. Even if you feel miserable or anxious or depressed or upset or overwhelmed in the moment, something else could happen that you would beg to get right back to where I am right now and be so grateful for where I am in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, we felt like that with moving, right? There were so many things then that we complained about. And now that we've moved, it's, oh, wow, that aspect was a slice of heaven, right? So there's nothing like change that can help you remember those things. But, when you were talking light, you made me realize that letting go is kind of like trying to figure out how to make a cork float. If you ask yourself, how do I make a cork float? Like, do I need to attach a motor to it? Do I need to come up with some technology to help it out? No, you just let the thing be. The cork already knows how to float. You just got to leave it alone. And that's how it is with traveling lightly. We got to let ourselves be who you really want to be, like what you really like, enjoy what you enjoy. And sometimes when we go to these different places, we do it for everyone other than ourselves. Oh, you're going to Rome? You absolutely have to go to that cathedral over there. Or you're going to Texas? You have to have the barbecue. No, you don't. You're free to listen to those moments that say, hey, go check out this place that's not going to look cool on Instagram. Hey, go do this thing and engage that person that's not going to make your travel sound sexy, because you're here for you, not for the show. Let yourself be.
Yeah. Like, let me connect a few things that don't seem like they connect right away. So your book is called Travel Light. And the subtitle, though, is Spiritual Minimalism to Live a More Fulfilled Life. At first, before I started reading the book, I wasn't able to connect those two dots. For our listeners, maybe you could connect the dots for us.
Sure. So spiritual minimalism, let's define what that means, first of all. So spiritual is something that is being accessed from the inside out. That's how I meant when I said spiritual. And then minimalism, doing more with less. So a way to live your life by doing more with less, but taking your cues from what I call your heart voice, which is your sort of connection to your spirit. If you choose to believe that you even have a spirit, maybe some people don't believe that. I don't know. But I know what has happened is we've all had moments of serendipity where you had a thought about something and then you experienced something later that day that reminded you of the thought. Maybe you thought about a person and you ran into something that reminded you of that person. You're thinking to yourself, I wonder if those two things are connected. And it yields this really beautiful, expansive feeling, because then you start thinking about those possibilities. Well, if those two things are connected, then what else is connected?
Yeah.
And if you start looking at your life in that way, it allows you to have the ability to let go of things from the past that seemed to be random or arbitrary, and also apply that same framework to maybe that thing that I said was bad that happened to me 5 years ago or 2 days ago is actually also leading me to this good thing that happened, that just happened 5 minutes ago, or that could happen in the future. And so it's kind of a way of embodying that thing that Steve Jobs talked about in that famous commencement speech, where he said, you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And if we bring that perception to our life and to the history of our life, we could make the argument that everything that you've experienced that has been good is tied to something that you didn't like when you went through it.
Right.
So who's to say that that wasn't a navigational tool leading you in the direction of whatever you're enjoying right now? That's what travel lightly means.
Well, let's talk about what gets in the way of that enjoyment, because I think that's the heart of Perry's question. Quite often our expectations of a place or of a situation, they clutter the present moment, because I want it to be a particular way. And I certainly suffer from this as a person with OCD. I need everything to be perfectly organized. I want it to be just like that. And if it's not like that, if it's not exactly like my expectation, then what? I failed. But all of those expectations, quite often, they pull me out of actually experiencing what's going on right here, right now.
Yeah. And so, okay, where do these expectations come from? They come from past experiences. that we're sort of holding on to, hoping that something in the future is going to tie to the past. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. Most likely it won't have anything to do with what happened in the past, in which case, again, presence is going to open us up to the possibilities of whatever moment we happen to be experiencing. But to your point about the cork, you can't get present by saying to yourself, be present, be present. Because if you're going around saying, be happy, be present, be happy, be present, be fulfilled, you're the least fulfilled, the least present, the least happy person in the room, right? It really has to become a natural extension of just who and what you truly are. Just like if you look at a child is just present. They're just curious. They have a sense of wonder. They can play with a stick for a couple of hours, right? But we have been indoctrinated as adults to think that our happiness comes from having a certain type of experience, right? Having a certain type amount of money, having a certain type of relationship. And so we've kind of lost that sense of wonder. And if we can regain that, again, from the inside out, then as an extension of that, we'll find ourselves becoming more present and less, expecting less of whatever's happening around us and being open to whatever could happen around us. And then seeing that as, okay, well, this is interesting. It's interesting. And genuinely meaning that this is really interesting. I don't need it to be this way or that way. And instead of looking to get something from it, which I think is really at the root of that, I want to get something from this, we can switch that and say, okay, what can I give to this? Maybe it's just being myself. Maybe it's just smiling. Maybe it's showing appreciation or something along those lines.
It's one of those persistent and plausible lies that I need to be something, do something in order to enjoy that simplicity you talk about. What is it that gives that lie such power? Why is it so believable?
Because of, especially nowadays, because of social media. And our projection onto what people's experiences are based on what they've curated for us to see, I think. We see them doing these things and having these other experiences. And so we project what that means. And largely it's because we've been indoctrinated to believe that we have to achieve our way to happiness. And so look, they're having all these achievements and all these experiences. And what's interesting is, you could be having a really beautiful, you could be in a really beautiful place and having a really interesting experience, but everyone's sort of tethered to their phone and we're looking at other people and you're in Cabo and you're looking at somebody in Thailand and go, wow, this is really beautiful. I wish I was in Thailand. What do you think they're doing in Thailand? They're looking at you in Cabo going, oh my God, look, honey, look there in Cabo. This looks amazing. And then, the backstory, it's like those Instagram versus reality posts where they show you the sort of classic shot that everybody takes. And then they pan back and you see this big wave of tourists and it just, and trash and doesn't look anything like you thought it was going to look. Everybody's kind of having that experience, whether you're in an exotic place or even just in your normal place, we're trying to figure out, okay, this is the best corner of my apartment. Let me just shoot content here, but you don't see what else is happening around. And, I think the way to kind of pull back from that is, again, to just keep focusing on what's happening internally in terms of your own gratitude, your own appreciation, what you can celebrate for yourself, what you can give to a situation. I have a part in my book, Travel Light, saying, give what you want to receive. And so what's the one thing that everybody usually wants to receive? And, no matter who you are, no matter what your status in life is, some degree of appreciation, So give that. And it's amazing how once you give that to someone else, it also benefits you. If you just compliment somebody's shoes in front of you in the line at the Starbucks or the coffee shop or whatever, it's going to make you feel better. It's going to make them feel better. And it's going to make you feel better. They're going to remember it for the rest of their day. You're going to remember it for the rest of your day. And if you can make a habit out of that, that's another great way to just get present.
There's a particular lightness to that, what you're talking about here. And everything that's happening off the screen on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever, it's really heavy. We all aspire to travel through life more lightly, to do more or be more with less. And yet no one aspires to be weighed down. And yet we are constantly weighing ourselves down, whether it's with expectations, as Perry brings up, and distractions. We're weighing ourselves down that way. We weigh ourselves down with material possessions. We weigh ourselves down when we're literally traveling somewhere and we need 3 suitcases for a 4-day trip. And I'm wondering, from all of your travels and living rather nomadically, what have you learned about shedding those burdens that are weighing us down?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I first started traveling this way in 2018, I had a carry-on bag, okay? And then after about a year, I realized I had way too much stuff. And the reason was because I was asking myself the wrong question. The question I was asking initially, going out of my 2-bedroom apartment and into my carry-on bag, is how much stuff can I fit inside of this carry-on bag? So I, put as much as I could in there and as many varieties of clothes as I could, instead of asking the question, what am I actually wearing, right? What do I feel like I'm actually going to need? So anyways, after about a year, I decided I had too much stuff. And the reason I decided this is because when you're living this way, what people don't realize is you're literally carrying everything you possess around with you. And it's heavy. It's heavy to carry that carry-on bag around. And I was moving around like every 1 to 2 weeks. So I lightened my load to a 40-liter backpack from a 22-inch carry-on bag. 6 months later, oh my God, I still have too much stuff. And what made the difference this time was I went on YouTube and I learned how to hand wash my clothes. And so I was able to cut that down to just a day pack. And I'm working my way down to a tote bag. No, I'm kidding.
And eventually you'll be Jack Reacher. Where everything you own just is on your person.
On me all the time.
There's no bag. There's no passport even. Somehow it's all fine. But like, there's a part of that. There's a trusting the universe or whatever you want to call it, trusting the possibilities, as opposed to, I'm going to need this. I hold on to this just in case. We often talk on this podcast how just in case are the 3 most dangerous words in the English language. And we often pack a bunch of things when we're traveling, or we buy a bunch of things for our home, or we hold on to things we don't want, but I might as well have it just in case.
Well, that's the great thing about living from a backpack is that you give yourself the freedom of choicelessness, right? Even if I wanted to get something, I don't have room for it. There's just no room for it. So I actually consider myself to be less of a nomad and more of a hunter-gatherer. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on where I am and what the season is. So for instance, if I go somewhere and it's really cold and I'm going to be there for a while, I'll go and buy a coat, or I'll go get a coat from somewhere and then I'll wear it while I'm there. And then when I'm done with it, I'll gift it. I'll give it away. Or I'll donate it to one of those clothing places, or whatever I need to do with it to shed it. And then I'll move on to the next environment, and I'll see what the vibe is like there. May have to get some board shorts or something if I'm in a surfing environment. So I'm very flexible in that regard. It doesn't have to be this is what I have, and it's permanent, and I'm going to just force myself to try to make my way with this. I'm open to things.
You're willing to pick something up, but you're also equally willing to let it go.
Yeah.
And I'm really fascinated by this distinction between nomad and hunter-gatherer. Mm-hmm. Can you just expound on that for a minute?
Well, hunter-gatherers, they hunt for what they need for that season, for that area. And then when they are ready to move on, those same things that they needed or that was relevant for them in that area may not be relevant for the next area or for the next season that they're in. So they're happy to leave it behind and acquire what else they need in that next place.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the next evolution to the whole, I'm living from a capsule wardrobe. Yes, I have a capsule wardrobe, but it's very fluid. Mm-hmm. And, if you wear the same pants all the time, eventually those pants are going to wear out. And so you may have to get a new pair of pants, but you don't know how those new pair of pants are going to suit your day-to-day life. So there'll be some overlap. Again, if I'm in a place for a week or 2 weeks, I'll have maybe 2 pairs of pants and I'll wear both and see which one works better for my purposes. And then I'll shed the one that doesn't. And sometimes the old one ends up becoming or making it to the next phase of the trip. And the new one I have to end up giving away. So it just depends. I'm not attached to it one way or the other.
And that willingness to let go, whether it's of a physical item or it's of an expectation.
Yeah.
My trip should have gone this way.
Yes.
I should be able to fit this in my backpack.
The airline shouldn't have lost my luggage.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
but it happens. You know?
But that's so important. That willingness to let go also doesn't mean that you have to let go. You have to shed it, but you're willing to when necessary.
Yeah.
Perry, thank you so much for your question. Our next question is from Heather.
Hi, my name is Heather. I'm from Connecticut. First, I just want to say thank you so much for everything you guys do. I've just started following your podcast a few months ago and have quickly become a Patreon subscriber because I get so much value out of many of the messages you guys have to give. But in regards to a question about how to pack lightly, our family's going on a little road trip up to the Adirondacks in a few weeks. We have 2 young kids, a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And we're hoping to be able to pack everything we need into one vehicle, including a kayak and a paddleboard, for our stay at a rustic cabin that is pretty far away from stores and things like that. And we're hoping to kind of try and minimize how much we have to leave the space and really just enjoy being in that one location while we're there. With that said, if those of us who might have kids, it's a little difficult to try and, in my mind, pack lightly because there are so many outfit changes per day sometimes, and little bumps that you might run into, needing Band-Aids and medicine or, any of those types of things that come with having kids. So while I feel as if I could pack lightly for myself, I'm wondering how to best pack lightly with little ones in tow. All right. Thank you guys so much again for everything you do. Bye.
So, Light, I think the best place to start here is talking about a philosophical quandary. The things you think you need often clutter the life that you want to have. You illustrated that a bit earlier. Was like, if I had 3 suitcases and I was traveling all over the world, what a pain that would be. But even a small carry-on bag, relatively small, can get in the way as well. You think you need these things, but they're actually things that society has told you maybe you need, or you saw it on a commercial or advertisement or whatever it might be. And so you don't actually need those things. You think you need them, but the life that you want is on the other side of all of the burdens that you're holding on to, right? And so I'm wondering for Heather here, helping her better understand what is truly essential, because there's nothing wrong with material possessions. We all own some stuff. Mm-hmm. Even Light Watkins, who's traveling with a small little backpack, he owns some stuff that enhances life. And your life could arguably be measurably worse without those things. So what are some best practices for Heather and her family? Some questions to ask as they get ready to embark on a journey a bit more lightly.
Yeah. So I'm a longtime meditation teacher, and I get the question around how do I get my kids to start meditating with me, which is kind of on the same category as how do I introduce minimalism to my whole family, because I can do it myself, but obviously they're not into it. And my answer to that question about meditation is you have to gamify it. You have to tell your kids, hey, you don't say we're going to meditate, because who the hell wants to sit around and meditate? You have to say, hey, you have to create a story. We all have this muse, and this muse speaks to us through silence. If we sit silent and we do that for a few minutes, then we're going to get a message. And then here's some paper and some color, markers, and I want you to draw what your muse says to you in the silence. And then don't disturb mommy, because mommy's going to be sitting here also getting a message from her muse. And so, you have them sort of in that story of, oh, wow, there's this really beautiful being that's giving me creative messages, and I get to create something. And so I would say when it comes to minimalism and doing less, I would say do the same thing. Create a story around it. We're going to see how much we can do with less. Mm-hmm. And whatever, I read this Instagram post about this guy who reversed his whole day with his kids. So they woke up in the morning, they put on pajamas and they watched movies and ate popcorn and the first thing in the morning. And then they, later on they took a bath and they had dinner. And then later on they went out and played and then, had lunch. And then it ended with them having breakfast in their underwear, late at night. And then So it was, and then they took a shower. And I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of engage the kids to think about things a little bit differently. And so it takes a little effort to gamify a whole trip. But I think that's one interesting way. Like, guys, we're all going to take just one bag, and whatever you put in this bag is going to be your special item for this trip. And we're probably not going to have everything we need, but we're going to figure out if we can, like, if I can use something in your bag or you use something in my bag, whatever you need, and we'll just see what happens. I don't have kids, so I don't know what that day-to-day reality is like, but I grew up with 3 brothers, and so there were 4 of us, and my mom didn't really play those kinds of games. and if the parent is stressed, then that's going to also negatively impact the whole experience for everybody. So there's another thing you can do is just make sure you're in a state that's going to give more of what you want, more appreciation, as opposed to taking that away because things aren't going the way you want them to go. So there's a few options, Heather.
My wife is, our daughter's 10 now, but when Ella, our daughter, was about 4 years old, or certainly when she was 1.5, like Heather's kids, what my wife Bex would do is she would pack Ella's stuff not in a separate bag, but in her bag as well. And part of this is about setting up these boundaries that work really well, because here's the truth. Your 4-year-old and certainly your 1.5-year-old don't care what you pack. They don't have an expectation that you should pack these things. Maybe they have a stuffed animal they want to bring with them, or a blanket, or there's a item that they have to have with them. Okay. We want to be respectful of that. But also, it's not the end of the world. You could even show them if they leave that at home, or they leave it at the hotel or at this cabin. Oh, I left my favorite stuffy. Okay. What's the lesson from that even, right? And so you're going to learn some lessons along the way. One of the lessons you're going to learn is we packed way too many things, and we didn't use 80% of the stuff we packed, or 50% of the stuff we packed, or 20% of the stuff we packed. We packed all these just-in-case items, and just-in-case never showed up. You'll also learn there will be some things that you didn't account for. There's something you didn't pack that you wish you would have. That's okay too, because generally you can either go without, you can find an alternative that's relatively close to where you are, even if you're out in the middle of nowhere. Before we started recording, I told you when Ryan and I moved to Montana, middle of nowhere, cabin, side of a mountain, 1 traffic light, 3,400 square miles. There was a little general store at the nearby town. So even if we had an emergency where we absolutely needed something, we had access to it, even though it was not perfect. It wasn't ideal. It's not like Amazon was showing up with same-day shipping out there. And yet we had access if we absolutely needed it. But also, sometimes these little short trips, they're an exercise in going without. Understanding a lot of the things that you think you need in your everyday life. Not only do you not need it, but maybe it's getting in the way.
Yeah. 2 brilliant things about Light's concept of gamifying things is that, number one, it neutralizes the defensiveness that people have about right and wrong. When you try to get people to stop doing something that you think is wrong, what are they going to do? They're going to get defensive about it. But when you say, let's play a game, it's not morally wrong to dribble the ball out of bounds. It's just inconsistent with a rule that we're choosing to follow while we play this game. Secondly, it's not a permanent lifestyle change to play this game. It has a finite period of time, and it's going to be over, and we can reflect on it and see if we want to continue. And so when you influence people by saying, let's play a game, there's no defensiveness because you're not saying my way is the right way. And there's no sense of religiosity about it because you're not saying we're going to commit to changing forever. So you give people the freedom to experiment and explore a new idea. And then at the end, we come back and say, hey, did we learn anything? Do we want to do that again? And it's a way not only to influence people, but to help you learn about what's driving the people that you're trying to influence. So I thought that was brilliant. I hadn't thought of that before, but I love that concept of using games to do that, break down that defensiveness.
I would also say, don't wait for the trip to start playing games. Like start you doing that while you're at home.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of get the kids, their mindset thinking, okay, this is going to be a game. What kind of game can we play this time? Because you've already sort of worked out the kinks and which rules that they're willing to follow, which ones they aren't willing to follow. And then you can then use the road as just another iteration of the game that you've already been playing at home.
Welcome back, y'all. Joining us on the phone right now is my good friend, Ryan Nicodemus. Hello, best friend.
What's up, best friend and best friends? What's up, studio?
Hello, Nicodemus.
Oh, it's so good to hear Mal's laugh. Weird to hear TK's demon voice, but
Ryan, real quick, because we're getting ready to jump into the lightning round, but I wanted to give an update to the audience. I know you've had so many travails and mishaps on your journey back to, it's like the Oregon Trail. You lost a wagon wheel.
Oh man, I can only imagine. I only had to go like a 20% of the Oregon Trail. I can only imagine if I had to do. I would have made it back in the day.
So talk about
being in a covered wagon.
The journey going back there. Now you had to stay with your in-laws for a while who aren't in Missoula, and now you're finally back in your place because you were Airbnb-ing it out. But you were telling me earlier that when you got there, you realized like, oh, I have 2 houses worth of stuff right now. Our audience would be appalled.
Oh man.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah. So when we got back to Montana, we had a couple more weeks where we had some like Airbnb guests in the place that we've had for about a year. And we decided to not be jerks and cancel their stays. So we stayed with Mariah's parents, which is great. I love staying down there. They got a ton of land. It's beautiful, beautiful scenery. But yes, when we got here finally to Missoula, we had 2 houses worth of stuff. So we had 4 mattresses when we needed 2. We had 2 sets of silverware when we needed 1. We had, 27 cups, maybe 28 cups when we needed like 4. So yes, it was very hypocritical in the beginning. We've got about half of the stuff gone that we need to get gone. We're going to do a little yard sale. But let me tell you, man, when I'm unpacking, and when I was packing, I am ruthless, man. Like I think the other day, like I came across a bathroom box and it had like 2 things of antibiotic ointment in there, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just get rid of one of these. It was expired anyway, but I'm like, if I need it again, 2020 rule, baby. But yeah, it's been going great and almost so close to getting settled in.
Well, I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but today is National Girlfriend Day.
Yes.
Sadly, my wife and I don't have a girlfriend, so
I was gonna say, how many girlfriends you got?
We're
now?
not able to celebrate. So I'm actually calling you right now to see if you'd be willing to be my girlfriend today.
Of course, dude. I'm always your backup girlfriend.
You are the best.
I need a girl.
We are taking applications, though. The DMs are open.
Oh my God.
Ryan, so it is time for
the lightning round.
The lightning round.
Yes, indeed. This is where we
Let's
answer
do it.
your questions from TikTok. You can follow the Minimalists on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X, they're calling it now. Also Threads. We're at The Minimalists on all of those platforms. Of course, Ryan Nicodemus is at Ryan Nicodemus. During the lightning round, we each have 60 seconds to answer your questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you like. You can find those show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast. Today's question comes from Get Out.
I'm fine with letting go of my stuff, but should I give my kids a choice over what they do with their stuff? When do they understand what letting go really means?
Let's throw 60 seconds on the clock for Ryan Nicodemus. Ryan, you got something pithy for us?
Yeah, here we go. Other people's possessions are only your responsibility if you accept them as your responsibility.
Ooh.
So sometimes our kids, they will have a bunch of stuff. They leave it at our house, or maybe we get some stuff inherited. We get some stuff passed down to us. But the thing is those things thrust upon us, they're only ours if we accept them. So when are your kids going to be able to let go of stuff? I don't know. It's their stuff. Let them decide. But one thing's for sure, their possessions do not have to be your problems.
Yeah, it's spot on, man. Because here's what happens. We often pick up other people's problems that they didn't even try to hand us. And so that is especially true with our children. I can tell you this I'm the father of a 10-year-old daughter, and I often pick up problems from her that were never a problem to her in the first place. And so when Get Out here is talking about, hey, I'm fine with letting go of my stuff, but do I give my kids a choice? Well, of course, we can talk about boundaries. It does make sense to set up boundaries for your kids. We have to do that for our kids. But if we are constantly telling them everything that they're supposed to do, how are they possibly going to learn for themselves, which is a really good segue into something pithy for TK Coleman.
You can't teach someone how to let things go unless you're willing to help them understand what it really means to hang on. Why do we get rid of things? We get rid of things because the cost of clinging compromises the freedom we gain from letting them go. And so when you're working with children, for instance, and you're trying to help them develop their ability to say no to things, you have to help them understand the commitments involved in saying yes to things. Mom, Dad, I want a new puppy. No shortage of such requests from children. All right, that's a fair discussion to have, but part of what it means to have an honest discussion is to talk about what kinds of responsibilities are you willing to assume. Puppies have to be walked. They have to be cleaned. They need time. They need attention. Are you willing to say yes to any responsibilities? All too often, parents victimize themselves by treating it as if it's their job to say yes to whatever their children wants. The child changes their mind in 2 days. I'm bored with it. You're left holding the bag, doing all the maintenance work, paying all the costs. And so when you deprive your children of the opportunity to take accountability for things, you are depriving them of good, healthy thinking. Responsibility is the ultimate intelligence enhancer. When you say, hey, I'm going to demand something of you before I say yes to this possession, you're teaching them how to think critically and creatively. That's how you show them how to let go.
Are you reminding parents to walk their dogs and walk their kids?
I'm reminding parents to make their kids walk the dog sometimes. You'd be amazed.
I sometimes see parents with their kids on a leash. And so I do see parents walk their kids from time to time. Let me get back to the question here. How do you help kids understand what letting go is? How do you help anyone understand what letting go is? Letting go is not something you do. Letting go is something you stop doing. You stop clinging to the excess. You stop clinging to the toxic relationships. You stop clinging to the material possessions that aren't serving you. You stop clinging to the toys that you used to play with that you don't play with anymore, and now they're just getting in the way. And Ryan, you've experienced this recently. You've had to let go of a lot of things during your move to Montana. You let go of some things here that you knew you couldn't bring forward, and now you're in your home, and there are things you have to let go of there because they simply don't fit the space. Letting go doesn't mean I need to do anything. It means I need to stop holding on to all of these things that are in the way.
I love what you're talking about, man. Because when I think about clinging, and especially when I think about other people clinging in our lives, you can't really force someone to stop clinging. You can't force someone to let go. But what you can do is you can support them in their journey with their stuff. And maybe that's what these parents here should do with their kids. You know, if they're clinging, fine. You can't talk them into to anything other than what they already want to do. So, support your kids.
And generally, when I'm dealing with Ella, it's not about, well, you should have this or you shouldn't have that. Now, true, there are some boundaries. If she brings home a canister of kerosene and a bunch of matches, no, you know what? I'm going to set up this boundary because you don't understand the dangers of holding on to something like that. Clearly, you don't understand. But if it's a stuffed animal, instead of saying, you should get rid of this, or if it's an old toy, you need to do this, it's about getting curious. Oh, do you still play with that? No? Huh. What would happen if you got rid of it? Well, I guess I'd have more room for the toys I actually do play with. Oh, so understanding the benefits of simplifying, isn't that so much better than here are the rules and the laws of minimalism? That's not going to convince any kid. You're going to drag them kicking and screaming away from their toys, and then they're just going to resent you for it. Speaking of letting go, Ryan, we had to let go of your cardboard cutout.
That's all right.
We have a picture of you on the screen instead because you should have seen the things I did with that cardboard cutout during National Girlfriend Day.
He was throwing darts at it, man.
I don't know why.
You can call them darts.
I don't know why you put a wig on me. My hair's long enough.
Hey, don't you kink shame me. Ryan, we're going to check in with our Patreon live stream in a moment, our afternoon Zoom that we do. But first, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. We just caught you up on Ryan's travels and travails, but if you want to dive deep, he just sent out his first monthly mentoring message. You can visit ryannicodemus.com. Ryan, I got to say this, man. I really, really enjoyed what you wrote for that first email. and you sent it out to all of the people who subscribed. I was so impressed, not just by the quality of the work, but by the brevity and how much time that really went into this essay that you wrote about having problems. Do you want to give just a brief overview of that experience where you realized something about all of the problems you were encountering on your trip back to Missoula?
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about context, and man, I had nothing but problems, and still, things are coming up, but it's okay because my context is it's a very high context. It's a very uplifting context, and I won't give any spoiler alerts, but I talk about that context in this monthly mentoring message, and I'll post it on social media. So, there's no website to see it at, but you can certainly see a HTML version of it. You can go to my social media and click on it there. But here's what I'll say. Life always has things come up. And when things come up and when problems arise, it does not mean that life is falling apart. It only means the meaning that we give it. And this move has taught me a lot about the meaning that I give things when they start to fall apart.
Well, if you're interested in getting those monthly mentoring messages for free, by the way, RyanNicodemus.com, just go over there, put in your email address. I know Ryan, and I know he'll never send you spam or junk or advertisements. Just a nice uplifting message once a month.
Amen.
Ryan, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Love y'all. See ya.
By the way, we'll see you on the next Friday afternoon Minimalist Zoom. Looking forward to that as well. Ryan will be joining us for our next Friday afternoon Minimalist Zoom, where we interact with our Patreon audience on a Zoom call face to face. Love you, brother.
Love you too, man. See you, patrons. See you, studio.
Much love, my brother.
Peace.
Alabama, speaking of the Friday afternoon Minimalist Zooms, you're over there in the chat collecting questions as we go through these experiences. They're like live events, but they're virtual. They're like Zoom calls with the Minimalists. And we do them once a month, the first Friday of every month. Patreon.com/theminimalist, or just click the link in the description. And you collect some questions we're not able to get to during the face-to-face interactions. People type questions in the chat. Do you have one of those for us now?
I sure do. Here's one from Mark. If you understand not to worry, but you still have anxiety about things, how do you manage that feeling?
I think about worry being a type of fear. To worry about something is to pray for something bad to happen in the future, right? I never worry about the past. I wonder if I'm going to get a flat tire on my drive down here earlier this morning. I'm not worried about it because it's already happened, right? But worry is just a narrow sense of possibility. We're thinking about all the possibilities, and we look at the one that stands out that we're supposed to have some sort of concern about. And there's nothing wrong with having concern over something. Concern can help us, point us in the right direction. Oh, you know what? That river's full of alligators. I have enough concern that I don't want to swim in the river of alligators. And if I am swimming in a river of alligators, then the worry is probably productive enough because it's teaching me that I want to get out of this river of alligators. But the truth is, right now, if I'm in the studio and I'm worried about alligators eating me, that doesn't do anything. It doesn't serve a purpose in my life. And TK, I know with respect to fear, the antidote to that is examining all of the other possibilities. Examining fear or worry is examining a narrow subset of all the possibilities. And we're focused on that. And it makes evolutionary sense to be focused on it because we can be harmed and it can hurt us. But also we can pivot that focus. What am I actually focused on? What are the real possibilities out here? Instead of being worried, what am I thoughtful about? What am I optimistic about? What am I encouraged by? What makes me feel courageous? A lot of the other possibilities that don't make me worry, they make me feel something utterly different.
That's right. Managing my feelings is analogous to managing my time. It's a well-intentioned misnomer. I can't manage time. Time is going to be what it's going to be. What I can manage is what I do with the time that I have. In a similar way, it's about managing our reaction and responses to our feelings. Our feelings are not evil. They are not indications that we are bad people. And so the first aspect of that is do no harm. When you feel something like fear or anxiety or worry, don't condemn yourself. Don't look at that as evidence that you are a bad person. Feelings pass through us. They circulate around us. We feel them at different times for a lot of different reasons. Don't be your own enemy because of the feelings that you feel. The second thing is to not only do no harm, but to find the most constructive action step you can take given the feeling that you have, So that doesn't mean you can have a normal day if you're feeling anxious, but what's something healthy you would feel good about doing in the future? And what's the best thing you can do? You can't do your best, but you can do the best that you can at that given moment in time. And so I think a lot of emotional management is really about saying, let me love myself and learn from myself in spite of what I feel. And let me treat this day as a special day where I do what I can. It's like with writing, right? There's some days you're just not that inspired, and you might have to show up and say, well, man, let me get 100 sentences out there. Let me get a few thousand words out there. It's not going to be my best day, but I'm going to do what I can with what I have.
Yeah. For me, I teach this to my writing students at howtowritebetter.org. It's about sitting in the chair. The 4 words that totally changed my life. Donald Ray Pollock told this to me. He's one of my favorite novelists. I had lunch with him at a Thai restaurant in Chillicothe, Ohio. And I was talking about how he stays motivated, what's the word count. I was trying to get real specific, technical, but practical and mechanical aspects to his writing routine. He's like, just sit in the chair. No distractions, none of this other stuff. It's about sitting in the chair. What does that really mean? It means showing up and being prepared for the possibilities. Because if I actually show up in a vulnerable way, we were talking earlier with Light Watkins about being vulnerable and how that allows us to connect to other people, but it also allows you to connect with yourself in a way that fear disconnects you from yourself. Alabama, thanks for that question from Mark. We'll do some more from our last Zoom call. We'll see y'all on the next Zoom call, first Friday of every month, patreon.com/theminimalists. But in the meantime, Alabama, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
In episode 399, you talked about the hobby clutter and how that can add up and how to know whether you actually need the materials for that hobby or not. One place to check in order to be able to borrow such materials are the local libraries and local universities. Of course, this is location specific, but I know at my local library, they have sewing kits, they have camping kits, and other such hobby kits. So that way you can check it out just like you would a regular library book, try it out for the week, and then return it at the end. And that's a really great way to be able to give a trial run to a hobby to see if it's something you'd like to invest in more.
All right, we'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 406, which includes answers to a bunch more questions. Questions like, what's the best way to intentionally pack clothing if the temperatures constantly change in the place I'm traveling to? Hey, Joshua says that he never travels without a grounding mat. But isn't that a bit unnecessary? I wish I had someone to share my travel experiences with. How do people enjoy traveling alone? And a bunch more questions for Light Watkins and the Minimalists over there on the Minimalist Private Podcast. Also this week, we have another private Minimalist home tour. We're actually going to make fun of and then appreciate Professor Sean's pen collection. And we're going to see how this applies to minimalism, and I actually think that it does. Plus, we've got much, much more of less. And if you want to hear all that, visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly Maxwell episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain access to all of our podcast archives all the way back to episode 001. And if you're still on the fence, Patreon is now offering free trials. So if you'd like to test drive our private podcast, you can join for 7 days for free. Big thanks to Light Watkins for joining us today. You can check out his book and his podcast. We'll put links to those in the show notes. That is our minimal episode for today. If you leave here today with just one message, please let it be this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Love and light, my friends.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.